Yo, what up, bruh? It's Crush, and in honor of Captain Kuba, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make my own God of War Ragnarok story prediction. You can also think of this as the narration of the novelization of God of War Ragnarok. The title screen is the crackling, warm, burning campfire in their cabin. Just outside the cabin, the loud, cold, raging winds blowing can be heard. Only one can imagine the harsh Fimbulwinter that is happening, the hundreds of animals that have died or lost their home, the trees in which have been frozen, frostbitten, dead or knocked down, the snow covering the ground, rocks, boulders, and any open crevice. Atreus is revealed sitting on the stump of a wooden log, close to the fire. We also see the appropriate clothing for the weather he wears. Furthermore, we see him looking and mending to his bow, in which he has now grown more into, just as his mother said he would. Mimir is shown to us reading a book on a table. Flipping the pages with a wooden spoon, Mimir gives an as something in the page he is reading piques his interest. It isn't until now that Kratos is unveiled to us. One would notice how his white ash skin had faded away slightly further. However, his chain-binded scars on his wrists are still prevalent, as if that part of his body never aged at all. He stands, doing nothing but staring into the blazing campfire. It makes one wonder what thoughts are racing through his mind. Kratos says aloud, "Atreus, we will have to go hunting in order to ensure the food supply will be enough to carry us through the remaining duration of the winter. Make sure you will have everything you need. We will not be returning until we bring back the hunted game." While Atreus was doing finishing touches to his bow, he thought to himself, why does father still believe this is not Fimbulwinter? This is unlike anything I remember when I was younger. Why is he thinking this is just another winter? What if now he believes the dream I had? It is still so vivid. Every time I think about it, I experience it again. So much so it's like I'm in there in person. It's like a memory of what has already happened, even though it hasn't. It truly is strange. We were woken up by lightning striking our home. Father instantly came to his senses and told me to grab my bow. He grabbed his axe. The lightning persisted. It was so powerful it even made a hole in the roof. I don't know how, but Father had already known someone was outside waiting for us. Or at least he felt trouble, as he said being worried is how he keeps us alive. Hence why we both had our weapons. He approached and opened the door. A hooded man was in the distance. Father said, "Who are you?" much louder than I could ever say. Even through the lightning striking the ground, you could still hear him say it. Then the man moved his cloak, revealing Mjolnir. He then placed his hand by it, ready to fight. And then I woke up from that dream. Well, now I realize it truly was more of a vision, I guess. "Do you not hear me? We are leaving," Kratos commanded. "Yes, sir," answered Atreus. Just as Atreus vocalizes, wolves seeming to be outside the cabin began to howl and growl. Kratos faced the door shortly after, anticipating enemy Draugr, or perhaps desperate, hungry wolves, as ever since Fimbulwinter started, the situation with Draugr worsened more and more. It seems Odin may have actually punished the Valkyries even worse upon them attempting to return to Valhalla to fulfill their duties. The situation also worsened with any and all predatory carnivores desperate for prey, so much so they'd even go after Draugr or anything that moved, thinking it would be meat. Atreus called out, "Father, they need help. All they want is food too." "No, we need not concern ourselves with anything other than our survival, especially with the lack of game exposing themselves. If you want to help them, then place them out of their misery." Atreus responds, annoyed and what may seem to some angry. "I didn't ask for your help. I can do this myself." Atreus grabbed his arrows quickly, hoisted them around his neck, opened the door, and stepped out into the yard, calmly yet alert. Through the falling snow, his eyes hastily revealed a full pack of wolves and no other potential threats. Analyzing this, he drew an arrow to his bow. The wolves stared into Atreus' eyes and began howling at the sky. While this is happening, Kratos is just about to approach the door, but Mimir says, "Brother, let the boy handle the wolves on his own. Let him be more free. He aided you against the battle with Magni, and Modi and Balder. The lad can surely handle wolves. Let this be a test. Supervise him from afar, and if trouble comes, then intervene." Mimir looked at Kratos, awaiting a response. Kratos says nothing and looks towards the open door. Just as Atreus was going to let the first of many fast volleys release, he felt a buzzing in his head. "This is weird. It feels like something I know," Atreus said in his mind. He lowered his bow. A minute of this non-stop howling has occurred. Kratos sees how not one arrow has been fired, and now how Atreus' weapon has been lowered. Feeling something is wrong, he walks towards him. As he steps closer, one by one the wolves stop howling and scatter. Just as Atreus is behind Kratos with Leviathan raised, the last of the pack sprints off. Kratos asks, "Are you alright?" with a strange yet concerned look to his face. "Yes, I am," Atreus answers. Kratos asks him, "Why did you not fire? Did you feel the winds caused too much unpredictability as to the trajectory your arrows would take?" Atreus answers, "No, they weren't attacking me, so there was no need for me to shoot them. They just wanted food." Kratos further commented, "They could have been food for us, yet you let them all slip away. Not only did you want to help the wolves by feeding them our rations, but you also let the opportunity of them feeding us slip away." With this, the conversation was brought to an end. Kratos then tells Atreus to grab Mimir from their home and close the cabin door as their hunt has been delayed long enough. Atreus steps into the cabin and reaches out his arm and grabs Mimir. He then walks out and closes the cabin door. Kratos is handed off Mimir and attaches him to his belt. Kratos says, "This is your hunt. You lead." "Yes, sir," responds Atreus. So with Atreus leading, they head off into the forest. They traverse through inches of snow and loud cold winds. Due to the lack of game, they are forced to move much deeper into the forest than usual. They encounter numerous obstacles and Draugr. In order to keep them entertained, or well, at least Atreus, Mimir tells stories of his past life. Atreus laughs, but Kratos seems to be trying to block out his voice. They encounter new enemies as well, but what stands out are the constant calls of crows that seem to be coming from nowhere and everywhere, above them, to their left, right, and even from the ground. As the falling snow obscures their vision, anything ahead of 50 feet is coated by falling snow, similar to the effect of mist or fog. Finally, they come across an infant deer who is standing by their dead mother. It is not rare to see young staying with their mother even after they have died, as it is all they know, considering that their offspring is so young and clearly not ready for the everyday dangers of life. They slowly approach the game. Then Atreus signals to his father that they are close enough. Kratos stands still and watches his son while maintaining his guard and listening to their surroundings. Atreus removes his bow from his shoulders and holds it with his left hand. He draws an arrow from his quiver with his right hand and brings it to the arrow. He then places the arrow onto the bowstring and draws back, placing more and more tension every second. Atreus locks onto the deer and closes his eyes. In his mind, he thanks Mother Nature for the food, the future meal they will have. He reopens his eyes and is just about to release the tension-filled bow from the drawn-back arrow. However, the ravens that seem to have been tracking them fly close enough to the young fawn to scare it, making it run away. Atreus seems to be fed up and quickly places the arrow back into his quiver and reshoulders his bow. He begins to run towards its direction, but is quickly stopped by Kratos, informing him how they should conserve energy and not alert the animal of their presence. As this is said, the weather conditions worsen, with snow that grows in quantity, size, and coldness. Along with the snow is wind that grows in strength, coldness, and loudness. Atreus asks, "What now?" "I told you, this is your hunt, not mine. You yourself should know the fawn will return to its mother, so we wait," answers Kratos. He adds saying, "However, the weather conditions will continue to worsen. We must seek temporary shelter. This cave here." Kratos points to a nearby cave. "This is where we will set camp. You stand outside the cave and watch while I clear the inside." They approach the cave. Atreus stands outside and faces the forest while Kratos ensures that no inhabitants or enemies are inside. While Atreus is watching the forest, the same wolf pack begins pacing back and forth. Also, like the ravens, they seem to have been tracking and following them. They glance at Atreus back and forth. He chooses to not knock arrows to his bow and lowers it to his left side. All the while, Kratos is oblivious as he is further moving into the cave. Two wolves in particular seem to be the most curious of all, as they are the closest to Atreus. They begin to move even closer, the sound of their steps deafened by the blowing wind. Both of these wolves seem to approach with no ill intention, as if Atreus can feel it. The wolves are side by side, heading straight towards Atreus, their paws leaving prints in the freezing white snow. The first wolf on the left is black with hints of gray all throughout its face and body, while the other wolf is white with hints of tan and an orangish tanned tail. Atreus is calm and not startled at all. Neither are the wolves. It's as if they both share the same emotions, as if they're connected. The wolves stop 10 feet away from Atreus and bow their heads. Atreus senses the same buzzing feeling in his head, this time more powerful, almost like the closer he is, the stronger this sensation or perhaps connection becomes. As if instinctively, he closes the distance between them. He shoulders his bow and glides his hands across both the wolves' heads. Kratos finishes clearing the cave and calls aloud, "Atreus, inside!" The wolves swiftly sprint off as Atreus watches disappointedly, as he did not want their moment to be interrupted. Nonetheless, he heads into the cave in front of his father. Kratos looks down at Atreus and begins to speak, saying, "Prove to me you are capable of surviving on your own. Remove all your arrows from your quiver except for one. Leave them behind. I will sharpen them. Now go, our meal is getting away." Atreus nods, not protesting at all. He hands off his arrows to Kratos, as he is more than up to the test and hopes he will encounter the wolves once again. Atreus leaves the cave, heading towards the fawn's destination, while pondering why he felt the same buzzing in his head when the wolves howled, and now that they bowed their heads. Kratos is left by himself. He places the arrows onto a nearby stone, grabs any surrounding burnable material, and creates a fire. He sits and stares into the campfire. Only one can imagine what he is thinking. Perhaps he finally accepts that Fimbulwinter is underway, or maybe now believing Atreus' vision of Thor visiting their home was true. How will he tell his son of his past? Atreus has already asked of the blade's origins before. He reaches to his side and grabs Faye's empty ash pouch, seeming to still think of her, still struggling to let go of her. He places the pouch away, looks at the arrows, and begins to sharpen them.
Our home is no longer safe, but it will be again. Atreus, are you ready?
He then rises up and grabs the deer, bringing it close to the campfire. Grabbing sticks, he places them above the campfire as to be able to roast the deer. With vicious care, Kratos cuts off the young fawn's left front leg and places it by the fire. He removes some of his clothing and unwraps the animal's open cut in order to not expose it. He picks up the leg and skins it, ensuring no fur or exposed bones are left on it. After skinning it, he pierces the deer's amputated leg through the stick and rests it above the fire. Atreus sits on a nearby stone, close to his father, all the while thinking to himself of what's been happening. 30 minutes pass and the deer limb is now cooked. Kratos removes it from the fire and begins cutting the meat. He gives himself a smaller portion of food while handing off a bigger one to Atreus. And so they both feast on the hunted young fawn, clean up, and get ready for sleep to end off the night inside the cave with the warmth of the campfire. Morning comes, and Kratos wakes up first. He gets everything ready and ensures they are leaving nothing behind. He wakes up Atreus and tells him that they are leaving, and so he waits by the cave entrance. Kratos grabs the deer and hoists it onto his back. "We must return home, as to prevent the deer from becoming wasteful," Kratos says. So they begin walking back home with Kratos taking the lead and Atreus behind, all while Kratos keeps his right hand closest to Leviathan, ready to drop the deer at any point should something or someone want to harm them. Atreus, on the other hand, is simply sharing conversation with Mimir yet again. During their conversation, Atreus asks Mimir, "Would it be normal for wolves to approach people so close? As in, so close you could touch them and it looks like they almost bow their heads before you?" Mimir answers, "That's very specific, lad. It's not normal for any wild animal to approach other wild animals, let alone one approaching another that is bigger and taller than they are. In the case of them bowing their heads, when alpha wolves assert their dominance, they stand tall and raise their heads above the pack, while its subordinates lower their heads and submit as to show there is no opposition to the alpha's leadership." They take a few more steps and Atreus comments, "Huh, interesting. Well, I don't know. I was just asking." Kratos and Atreus continue traveling across the forest, always hearing the calling of crows and the flapping of their wings. Wolves begin to howl once again, their howls so loud the wind cannot be heard. Atreus calls out, "Father, why haven't you taken out your axe yet? Do you not hear the wolves' howls? They're so close. It's like they're in my ears." Kratos answers, "What are you talking about? I only hear the wind, our steps, and the ravens. Are you hearing voices in your head again?" Atreus answers back saying, "No, only howls. It's different. It's like I'm drawn to it." "Well, there aren't any wolves in our current vicinity. If you would like to take a break, tell me." And they eventually make it back home. Entering the yard, you can truly see the effects of the falling snow and wind, in which feet of snow are atop of the cabin's roof. Kratos orders Atreus to open the door of their cabin. They walk closer and he opens the door, allowing Kratos to walk in with the deer and place it down near the house's burnt-out campfire. Atreus closes the door and follows in, sitting on his bed while Kratos restarts the campfire and properly stores the deer away. With this, their day ends with them falling asleep. In the middle of the night, Atreus is woken up by howling. However, he cannot come to the conclusion if they are in his head or real. Quietly, Atreus gets up and walks towards the door slowly as to not wake his father. He places his ear on the door and comes to the conclusion the howls are coming from outside. They become louder, but as they become louder in volume, Atreus' vision becomes clearer in the dark that is only lit by the campfire. He cautiously opens the door, sets foot outside, and closes it. With Atreus' clear vision of the night, he soon realized none of the wolves were ever howling. He questions how this is possible in his head, saying, "They're not howling, not one of them. Yet I can hear all of them, each and every single one individually in my head." The same two wolves approach him again, while all the others watch in the cover of the falling snow. Once again, they bow their heads, but this time also lowering their chests to the ground. Atreus steps closer, closing the distance once again, as if instinctively. The tens of other wolves carry out the same action, one by one, walking closer and bowing their heads down. Atreus just begins to make out how a figure in the distance commences their movement straight forward towards himself. This wolf is nearing 3 times the size of all the others. Atreus pieces together that this is the alpha of the pack and gets on guard. The alpha lets out one quiet, low-pitched howl and stares at Atreus with intensity, standing as tall as it can with its head raised to the sky and puffing out his chest. Again, instincts seem to kick in and Atreus steps forward, standing between the two wolves, planting his feet sturdy into the ground
standing as tall as he can, with his shoulders rolled back, chest stuck out, and eyes staring intently into the Alpha. The pack of wolves raise their heads and look at the Alpha. With his eyes, he lays them on all the wolves, then stares back to Atreus. And in synchronicity, they all face Atreus and bow once again, showing they've found their new leader. The Alpha then finally bows his head and submits to Atreus, accepting him as their newly appointed Alpha. He stares at his new surrounding pack and hears buzzing yet again, this time hearing howling that turns into words or names. Specky and Savannah are heard, as the two wolves by both his left and right side raise their head and look up at Atreus. "Are those your names, Specky?" The wolf on his left with the orange tail bows its head. "And that would make you Savannah." The black wolf with hints of gray bows its head. With all of this, all the wolves howl, and rapidly the volume increases. The buzzing becomes almost hurtful to Atreus. He begins to yell and scream. He drops to the ground and curls to a ball while covering his ears. Loudly he yells, "Stop it now!" They all instantaneously halt, as if they heard and listened to what he had said. He removes his hands from his ears and sits. Seemingly out of nowhere, Kratos steps out with a torch in his hand and says aloud, "Atreus, get behind me, now!" The pack sprints off except for Specky and Svanna. "Grab my axe and hand it to me. You wait inside." "No, father, they will not harm you. If they wanted to, they would have by now. They told me their names are Specky and Savannah." The wolves step back some while keeping their heads lowered as to not present themselves as a threat. "Then why were you screaming and yelling?" "It's because I heard a buzzing in my head, like the voices I heard in Alfheim." Atreus can tell Kratos is still on his guard, ready to use his fist at any moment should Atreus not get his axe. So he stands up and draws near to the wolves. Kratos cautiously says, "Stop, Atreus. They are wild, not friendly." Atreus ultimately draws near enough to Specky and Savannah to place his hands on their heads. "See? I told you they wouldn't harm us. They are friendly. This isn't the first time I've encountered them either. I first saw the entire pack when I was outside the cabin ready to shoot the wolves. The second time was when you were clearing the cave. These two came up to me, and now they've told me their names. I even think that they want to help us. We could use them. Especially now that the Lake of Line is completely frozen, we would traverse with them, build a sled." Kratos responds saying, "Atreus, did you not think it was important to tell me?" Atreus seems to not have heard this as he is looking at the wolves. Kratos walks to Atreus, places his hand on his left shoulder, and tells him to get back into the cabin. His son attempts to protest, "But father, "No, Atreus, I said get in now," Kratos orders. Atreus angrily listens and heads back inside, leaving Kratos and the two wolves. They raise their heads and look into his eyes. The remainder of the pack are revealed once again, removing themselves from the cover of falling snow. They all stare at Kratos and growl, showing off their sharp, dismembering teeth. Memories of when he trained in Sparta came to his mind, when he was put to the test fighting any wild animal that ventured into Sparta, or simply thrown into any wild environment left to fend for himself, trying to find his way back to Sparta. And another memory flashed like lightning across his mind when he laid his eyes upon the all-black X-Alpha, the memory of how he was brought to Midgard. Kratos held a defensive stance, his back against the rock wall, his blades out to defend himself from a trio of howling wolves easily twice his height. One black with verdant eyes, one white, and the third gray. The black seemed to be the Alpha, taking the most forward position. A beardless fallen god of war, clad in the clothes of his life in Greece. A man who had lost everything, was only fighting due to his Spartan warrior mind. He slashed his blades of chaos, creating fires that heated up the surrounding air and melted the piled snow on the ground, seeming as though the level of anger he has contributes to the volume, size, magnitude, intensity, and strength of the flames set free from the blades. He unleashed a Spartan warrior cry and continued to slash, but his actions failed to discourage their assault. Kratos realized he needed to bring down the Alpha in hopes of making the others submit and view him as their new Alpha. The White Wolf advanced as if on command. The movement revealed a woman behind the beast, clad in a long cloak and cowl obscuring much of her face. Her raised arm sent all three creatures airborne to attack. "Who are you?" Kratos screamed with all the force he could muster, just as a black wolf ripped into his thigh to drag him away. Kratos shakes the memory of his younger self and takes more steps forward, showing how he will not back down to the wild and rage-filled wolves. The ex-alpha growls and all the wolves begin to circle around Kratos, not one of them releasing their gaze, seeming to wait for an order and looking for a weakness. Kratos throws the torch to the ground and it is instantly put out. Now in the darkness, he raises his fists into the air and looks into the dark. The ex-alpha growls and all the wolves sprint and pounce on Kratos. Just as they are about to embed their teeth into his white ash skin and red tattoo mark. Well, I'm sorry to say, but this is currently how far I've gone into the novelization / story prediction of God of War Ragnarok. This is definitely something that I'm going to continue to do, especially considering the fact that my other videos that are like this, you yourself have said before that you enjoy it, that you like it, great narration, good job, all that. And plus the videos are liked, which further lets me know that they're being enjoyed by you. So definitely expect more of these types of stories or narrations, novelizations of God of War Ragnarok for sure. My next video is going to be talking about, will God of War Ragnarok be the last game? And then I have few other theory ideas. This one should be up, and then I don't know, maybe an hour or two after, a day after, and my next video will be up. I know it's been a long time, 11 days, pretty much 12 days by now, but thank you for having the patience. Enjoy the rest of your day, dog.